Welcome to Airway Exchange, the podcast for empowering educators and inspiring future CRNAs, a new series of Beyond the Mask supported by AA&A.
We're your host team. I'm Greg Collins.
I'm Nikki D'Amico.
I'm Erin Martin.
And I'm Louisa Martin. We're here to support the community of CRNA educators with conversations to explore, learn, and grow.
To pursue excellence in the evolving field of nurse anesthesia education.
And to champion our students and enrich the future of the profession.
This is Airway Exchange. Welcome back to Airway Exchange. This is Nikki D'Amico, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by my co-host, Louisa Martin. Hi, Louisa. How are you?
Hi, Nikki. I'm doing well.
Great. We're going to introduce our guest today. We are thrilled to be joined by Dr. Vicente Gonzalez, who is the Assistant Chair at Florida International University. Dr. Gonzalez earned a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Barry University, a Master of Science in Anesthesiology also at Barry University, a DNP at Barry University, and is now currently enrolled at Nova Southeastern University to earn his PhD in nursing. We are also joined by Dr. Ann Miller, also from FIU. She is a clinical professor and the chair of the nurse anesthesiology program at FIU. She has been in academia since 2012 after earning a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Rhode Island College in Providence, Rhode Island, a Master of Science at the University of New England in Biddeford, Maine, and a Doctor of Nursing practice from Northeastern University in Boston. Got a little cheering going on from my co-host here. Dr. Miller became the interim chair at FIU in 2022, where at that time the current attrition rate and some other metrics are off. Attrition rate was 22%, and I think I've heard you talk already about some of the other metrics that were first to come to your attention when you joined there. You then subsequently developed a program which is a dynamic interview process which assesses cognitive attributes versus non-cognitive attributes. We are so excited to hear about that and have you tell us a little bit more. I guess if you would just start by telling us what are some of those metrics that led you to become interested in this?
Sure. So the first key factor was 23%, and I had just taken over as chair. And as we all know, COA requires a nice little narrative of why we were not under 10%. And I was sitting in my office, and we were looking at EI, believe it or not, and the program had interviewed a professional from EI that was recommended from another university, and that's all we were going to do. And this kind of happened on coincidence. I had somebody sitting in my office who was getting credit for the presentation, said, did you ever think about looking at cognitive abilities because medical schools do that? And at a prior university, the PA program was doing it, so I said, tell me more. So they had identified the different stations and what they had done, but I said, could you send me their work? And she said, I don't have anything. So then we did the research, looked at how programs, and it specifically talked about med schools, PA programs, that they were testing cognitive skills and the differences. So it was 20 articles, let's put a framework together. What is this going to look like? It took us a year to develop. We piloted it 3 times with the simulation center, had all hands on board, faculty, staff, and it took a lot of kinks, wouldn't you say, Vince, of what worked, what didn't, and it was a huge success first round. And now we have attrition at 2%. But besides attrition, we're looking at resiliency, critical thinking, collaboration, team.
Think on your feet type stuff, because a lot of times what happens is the unfortunate reality is that there are programs out there, not anesthesia programs, so there are vendors or something that actually sell how to prep for an interview in nurse anesthesia school. So that's common. So the issue with traditional interviews, they just usually ask, well, why do you want to be a CRNA? Or why FIU? Which is not really assessing anything cognitive. And all those answers are pretty much canned. You know, it's just, oh, I love FIU, they're my first choice. Meanwhile, they've applied to 10 other programs. So that wasn't a good interview strategy.
To get back to the metrics, we wanted to look at course failures. We don't have enough data yet because cohort 27 was interviewed under this process. We won't know for another year. We were looking at academic performance, their GPA. right? At that 22% attrition, what was their GPA compared to now, this cohort? Looking at how many students on probation, right? Because we don't want that. We want to set them up for student success. Their clinical performance, NCE pass rate, it's phenomenal now. But at that 22%, what is that difference? So we don't have the data yet to publish it. First time attempt on NCE versus subsequent attempts. Resiliency, the critical thinking, the cognitive skills, and adaptability. So that's what the metrics that we're looking at in the framework, and we identified that through the literature that we found. How are we going to do that? And we'll be looking at those 4 stations, which is a critical thinking station, a dominoes station, a math station, and an escape room.
Okay, we're going to have to break this down in just a second.
Yeah.
But so these are all just the pieces that you assess in the interview process, or are you talking
Yes,
about
the new framework.
And you mentioned also some of your outcome metrics as well, like what you're looking at,
Yes.
hoping to achieve
Yes.
with that. So that's fantastic. So for the interview portion of this, when you just started to take on designing this, there was nothing else out there that was going to be suitable for you guys. You had to create this based on the literature.
We created everything. So
Fantastic.
when we talk about the specific stations, all of us were very frustrated because as much as we had 20 to 40 articles, and it's called multiple mini interviews, and we know OSCE testing, we still had to develop it, and we're like, okay, what are we going to get out of one of these stations? And we were all getting frustrated. Like, there wasn't a circle that fit into a square box, Vince, right? Yeah. And so we created these rubrics, and we couldn't just change our admissions process. We're the 4th largest university in North America. We had to contact the admissions office, who had to get permission from the provost office, show all our rubrics, show all our evidence. I did a SWOT analysis, did an SBAR, like a very formal selling
and
framework,
a presentation to the university. Yeah.
We hoped for the best. And so we pulled from the literature, but as we pulled it over the years, it all was like a square going into a square, a circle, and it all came together.
That's fantastic. So this is something that you're hoping, once you guys have trialed it, I assume that other programs can replicate this, and obviously once you have the data, that's going to be pretty compelling to the rest of us to
Well, like Vince said, how many of us, so tell me, right, you're the candidate, why do you want to be a CRNA? How many hours have you shadowed? Tell me the ethical, and it sounds the same after number 5, right? We don't want to hear it anymore. You look great on paper. Come and show us your CCRN knowledge, your critical thinking. Show us that you can do it. And we put the candidates in a room, and we have them compete with each other. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I know all of us, and we'll talk about COVID. I'll let you talk about the COVID and now.
Before COVID, we usually had the traditional interview style. You come in and, again, what do you want to be a CRNA and ethicals and all this other stuff.
In person.
Yes, and everybody had, of course, the right answers because, well, that's not hard to do. Then COVID came around, and then we had to do everything virtual. So all the interviews were via Zoom, but it was the same format. Why do you want to be a CRNA? So the questions didn't change. It was just a platform. It became a Zoom interview versus an in-person interview. But we could see sometimes when you look at Zoom, you can tell when somebody's eyes are looking someplace else. And we were seeing that quite a bit. So it's like, okay, this is the question they're going to ask. And so they put it somewhere, and then they would look at it and answer the question. So we noticed these things, and it says this is not this is not working. We can't keep going this. And then we had the other issues with the attrition, et cetera, and that's what we came to do this, to develop this framework and this format. And it's based really on medical school admissions. The first people that did this were the Canadians back in 2004. That's when they did, and they started comparing this, and their metrics were very longitudinal. They actually looked at how the students, they compared 2 groups, the traditional versus this new format that they developed, and they found that actually these people that were interviewed in this format and got admitted to their university, they actually did better not only clinically, but they had a higher pass rate on their national certification exam. So then that was and then from there, other authors have done, studies here and there. comparing, and obviously the traditional interviews have a lot of flaws in them. It's personal, meaning, if the applicant looks dressed nicely or something, then you're going to tend to favor that versus somebody that is maybe not to your liking. So there's an implicit bias that's already built into the system just because we are human. We have biases. It's very difficult to get rid of that. What having a rubric does is, they did it or they didn't. So it doesn't matter what they look like or your personal opinion of the candidate. The bottom line is, did they meet the rubric that you created? If they did, then they get scored accordingly. If they didn't, they didn't. So it makes it a more standardized process, eliminates some of the bias. Okay, that's almost impossible to get rid of, but as much as possible, it diminishes the bias. In addition, all the stations have at least 2 faculty. So in other words, you have 2 raters that are rating the same performance. So that's where the inter-rater reliability increases, because you have 2 people asking. We've done it twice. Yes, twice, the 27 and the 28, 2 cohorts. And we pretty much find that the scoring of the candidates agrees between the 2 raters that are in the room. So that lends some sort of, validity, to the process. It makes it less bias.
So Vince, I wanted to expand on that, because when the candidate leaves the room, if they're 1 point apart, we have to debrief and say why, because there was a problem. So when the candidate leaves, to get fairly scored, so you'll say you were 2, and I'll say 2.5, perfect. But if I'm a 0 and you're a 2, what went wrong? So they never leave having that interreliability, right?
Yeah.
And so statistically, it has to match. So they really get scored fairly.
We've done something similar to that, and what we've found that in those spaces where there is a little bit of disagreement, it's usually something that one person noticed, and then once they've sort of had a conversation around that, then they realize, oh, I noticed that too, and you realize other people, just salient details popped out for them more than the others. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine it may be similar to what you're finding.
And it also, except for the math and the domino station, and we'll get into that, the other portions is multiple candidates at the same time.
Which is so unique. It's a really cool.
Well, it depends on the station.
Yes, but that, for example, diminishes, because as a public university, the applicants, if they don't get accepted, they can go and voice some concern. Why wasn't I accepted? Doing it this way, I don't think you've gotten.
So before we had this, I would have 100 people. What did I do wrong? How can I get better? Because they know, say it's the critical station, there's always 3 candidates at a time. You did great, Nikki, but you did horrible, okay? I never get an email, not one, in 2 years, because they know they're not ready to come to anesthesia school, and then they'll reapply. Because they saw that the candidate who was strong knew their stuff. You knew how to interpret an ABG, right? PA catheter. You knew that arrhythmia. You knew the differential. You knew how to manage, but you did not. So I never get an email as a program chair.
And they're both nervous. So they both know, okay, you performed under pressure, I did not. That is a very powerful thing for them to see.
And they're told, because they're all CCRN, you can't, you don't get an interview if you're not CCRN. And we tell them, you'll be tested on CCRN material, fair game. So they knew coming in, and they know it's over 4 hours.
Interesting.
So it makes it, again, like Ann pointed out, it's not, you don't get, because they know that if I don't get accepted, but I was with 2 other people that really killed it, and I didn't do it, so it's like, that's why I didn't get admitted. So you don't have to explain anything.
And they see a model of what a good interview looks like, so they can say,
Correct.
That's what I really need to try to work towards the next time.
I'm sure we're going to go over maybe specific of each room, and we'll expand on that a little more, what those group interviews look like.
I just have a few logistics questions about the cohorts at FIU. So just how many students are in?
55.
55 in a cohort, okay. And then how many do you interview?
Double. So the first year we did 98. The second year we did 112, and it just was a logistics with timing. The way my program coordinator, because everyone gets 4 cards, a color represents a station, it's a well-oiled machine. Like, we practice this for hours in the simulation center. So usually the goal is just double of what we accept. That's it.
And that's about what we do, interview at least 2 applicants for
Yeah.
every seat.
Yeah.
How many days, how many hours? Is it 2 days? How long does that take for your faculty, your team
Yep.
to
So
initiate?
we do it over 2 days. We have a morning session and an afternoon. We go from 8 to 6:30 at night, 2 long days. So say we have 27 in the morning, 27 in the afternoon. We call it a parking lot, and I'll go over the directions. So they go in the parking lot. There are students who are in the parking lot, and that's a safe space, and they're told that. So when they're testing, because not every station is the same time. So they have free time, right? And we tell them it's a safe space. So for 4 hours, we test them, run through the 4 stations, then they do walking tours. So they're on campus for 6 to 7 hours for the day.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I was just curious about the logistics of, because it sounds like such a great way to engage with candidates in a meaningful, as unbiased as you can be way.
So, and I feel like a stewardess. I'm like this, right? Because they come out of the parking lot all pink down here because it's color coded. So critical thinking's pink. Domino's is blue. So I'm like this. You need to go here. I bring them to the rooms. I escort them. I make the students feel very safe because there's a representation of our program and our faculty that we promote. We're student-centered, and we provide a safe environment for you. And we cultivate that by being very warm and welcoming, and we put them in the room and start testing them. And we have the simulation center timing each station. As soon as the buzzers go off, again, I go get them, bring them back to the parking lot. I'm looking at the colors. I have a chart on my clipboard. I mean, I must walk up and down that hallway 1,000 times. Vince is always in the critical station, so I'm out there by myself running the show.
Part of it is the logistics of it, the timing of the
Took a year.
stations, so that there's downtime, and we want downtime for the students, because the parking lot essentially is, we have current students there. There's no faculty, and the candidates are free to ask whatever they want. And we tell the students that are there, honest.
It was funny.
Be
and
honest.
I think it was last year, the students, I said, I want the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the students told them, yeah, some of our peers failed. And I had the best answer, because the candidates asked me, that's why we're doing this interview process, to not have that happen. So I was so appreciative that the students were honest, and I was so happy, right, that we could be transparent of why we're doing this.
The other thing you gain there, though, is you're not doing any sort of bait and switch. I
No.
mean, they understand that nothing that you do in life has all good.
Right.
Being a CRNA is not all good.
Right.
It's got ups, it's got downs, and you want them to have that balanced view. So you achieve a lot in that bit. I mean, I think it's impressive that you get through 110, 120 candidates in the 2 days. It's backbreaking, but then you're done and you have all of the data in the pile.
Yeah.
So I think we got to break it down now. All right, tell us about your individual stations.
Sure, and I do want to add, when we assess their objective data that gets them the interview, I tell them in the parking lot, now you're all even. Everyone starts with a score of 0. It's irrelevant. It got you here. And they all have the same statistics. So they come into the parking lot, they sign an NDA. They cannot share the interview process. I tell them it's a safe space. We welcome them, we introduce ourselves, and then I explain what they're going to do. So I tell them they're going to have multiple interviews. You're going to be in a group, but you are getting assessed on your individual performance, and I make that very clear to them, and I always give them instructions.
Yeah, definitely.
And then at 8:30, we start. So depending on their color-coded, I take all of them, and I bring them to the certain station. So I'll start with medical math. Medical math, we put them in a room, 6 students at a time. They're allowed to use a calculator, and they get 6
Yeah, they get
math
6 questions
calculations.
that are ICU drips. Nothing fancy.
Nothing fancy.
Calculate this. I
Yep.
mean, nothing. And that's her, believe it or not, that's a station that, and I think we've had this issue before, it's been brought up before, and previous EDGE meetings.
Dosage
that
calculations.
Students, they can't do math.
They struggle. Yeah, especially
They can't do
mental
math.
math, but even with a
They can't do math.
calculator.
With the calculator, we've had,
They get a pencil and paper.
they got, what was it, the last time?
22 out of 112.
Yeah.
They got all
22 out of
6 right.
112, got all of them right.
So here's the thing, on the rubric, and Vince was a huge part of this, what do we do? Do we give partial credit, so if you get 4 out of 6, or is it 100 or 0? Vince said it's 0 or 100, and we all agreed, because in clinical, if you make a math error, you can kill someone. So in the rubric, when we were in the draft process, we were like, all right, we'll give so many points for 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 6. So now you either get 100 or a 0. That medical math can make or break you as far as where you end up on that top 55.
All the questions are drips that they normally use in ICU. So this is not some weird drip from, God knows where. They're all drips that they use, Levofed, all this stuff. There's nothing that they haven't seen before.
It would be very hard to argue that that's an unfair question.
No,
Correct.
never.
Correct. No, we don't. It's not like we ask, well, what would you do? Calculate the rate for a Vecuronium drip. No, calculate the drip for a Levofed drip, Neo drip, Propofol drip, because they do that in the unit. So it's nothing that they haven't seen before, and it's also CCRN. So this is not something that is, oh no, my God, I haven't. No, this is CCRN.
So
It's
that's not the fun part of the interview process or anything life-changing, but we wanted to test it, right? Because you have to do or know math or meet that competency. But here's the fun part. So we have a critical thinking station. The students are told in the parking lot how many minutes per station. So math is 20 minutes. Critical thinking is 50 minutes. The candidate comes in the room. They get directions from it's on the TV screen, the prompter, and we don't say anything. And then we say, are you ready? Each table has candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3. And then we ask them, what is your ICU experience? Because if we have a NICU, PICU, we'll change our questions, or neuro ICU. But otherwise, they're still CCRN, so fair game for everything. So we'll have 3 candidates, we'll have 2 to 3 evaluators, and we do role rotation. So I'll say candidate 1, I'll run, say, an ACLS rhythm, okay? And I'll say, what do you think? Now, it's not just a standalone rhythm. It is a YouTube video where it's beep, beep, beep with the pulse ox, and there'll be a scenario. Patient presents to OR, shortness of breath, SaO2, 80%, blood pressure of 60/40. What is your diagnosis? So candidate 1, what is your diagnosis? So what is your differential? So walk me through that differential. And they say something, and I'll say, okay, so tell me about conduction versus pump, right? So candidate 2, what do you think of that? Then what's your differential? And then you'll go down, then candidate 3. And Vince, this is your station, so I'll let you.
Essentially, we give the scenario, and then they tell us something, and I'll ask candidate 2, do you agree with that? Is there anything else you want to add? Would you change something? And then, depending on the answer they give me, and we'll go to candidate 3 and ask him the same thing. Is there something else that you want to do? Is there something different you want to add, you want to do or don't want to do? And then we rotate it. So in other words, every candidate gets a fresh scenario with the other 2 being the collaborators in that.
So they'll get about 15 scenarios. So we're looking at their interaction patterns, and we tell them no answer is wrong. So how are they interacting with each other? Is somebody cutting them off? Is somebody dominating? Is somebody supporting, right? We're looking at all those factors. Is it constructive disagreement, right? So we're also looking at that teamwork, the collaboration
Anesthesia
skills.
is collaboration.
Their adaptability and flexibility.
You're talking to the attending or another CRNA, and you're discussing, this. Well, no, don't do that because and so you have a discussion. So it's not I'm right, you're wrong type of thing. It's a discussion as to what's going on with the patient and what's the plan. So that lets us kind of see that. And because that is anesthesia. So that's,
everything we do is a team sport.
So it lets us see how they interact with each other, and if there's disagreement, how do they handle the disagreement? Because that's going to happen in real life. So that's really what we're
But we push them. It's not so we really go deep. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and when I go in the room, because I'm running the organization or the time management, They're all pale. They're ready to vagal down. I'm like, you guys are going to be okay, when they leave the room. So, but I need to find the best candidates because we want them to succeed, right? So on that paper, if you have a science grade point average of 3.8 with a BSN of a 3.7, your CCRN, right, with 3 years of ICU, which is our average data, show me your brilliance, right?
So that's two.
2 stations.
And
Yeah.
you, on your rubric, are addressing their social ability, right, to interact with the team. Is that part of the rubric
No,
for
so
that?
it's, even though it's an assessment and we're tweaking our rubrics now, it's on knowledge. So
Okay.
if they're
You just
in
addressed
confidence, there's not a score for that.
Yeah.
It's on their knowledge.
But it
But
seems
there
like
is
you
a
feel like it's
station that
important.
tests that too. The escape
Yeah.
room
Yeah.
does do
Okay.
that.
I think it's fabulous so far. I do have one question. Do you guys have them submit any sort of personal statement or essay?
Yes, and we're going to move away from that and do a virtual video because with AI,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've talked about that.
Yeah,
It's
we did.
almost meaningless at this point.
It's meaningless.
Unless it's a live sample,
Yeah.
them writing right in front of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Even then,
Yeah.
And the AI detection program
It's
software
meaningless,
is
yeah.
meaningless. A lot of them I've read will tell you that it is AI just to get you to pay for them to improve it, to humanize it. So they're trying to, we could do a whole other podcast on AI, but I was just
detection
curious.
software on the detection software
Yes.
to undo the.
Yes.
but that's
It's
part
crazy.
of getting them, they're getting the interview.
Right.
Remember, they're starting from zero.
Right,
When they
which I
come.
love.
Yeah, yeah.
That's,
You got to remember that what gets them there is their objective data, GPA, et cetera, a year. So, make sure that they have CCRN, make sure they have all these things. That's what gets them in the door.
It's a
That's
holistic
the ticket.
process because
Yeah.
it was non-holistic before.
Yeah.
If you look at non-cognitive, this shifts the paradigm to a very
Yeah.
fair, equitable, holistic admissions process,
Yeah.
which
So
we
you-
didn't even talk about. Yeah.
Your admission ticket is your objective data. So once you get there, actually the faculty that is doing the stations is blinded to their GPAs and stuff. We don't know.
As
I'm-
they should be.
I'm
Yes.
involved in
Yes.
this
To keep-
thing, but I see the GPAs and I see who we're interviewing. We go through that, but at the time that they get there, we're all blinded to their GPAs and personal statements and any of that stuff.
That's great.
We're blinded to
so
it.
they really are starting at zero.
Including me. When they come in with their names, I have no idea who's not, because I blind it. So I see it on the Excel, pick them. I don't know anybody until I shake their hand that day.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
So
Station 3, sorry to
Okay.
interrupt. This
No,
is
so,
very exciting.
Let me talk about the escape room. So the escape room, and we have certain faculty who do certain stations, and Dr. Diaz always runs the station. She'll go out of the room and say, good morning, good afternoon, welcome to FIU Island. And we have a lay that we give every student, and there's 6 in that station.
Sounds fun.
So so they get a lay and they look in the operating room, and you'd never know it. It looks just like an island. Palm trees, parrots. And the candidates laugh, and I think it relaxes them. And again, on the TV screen is the directions, and they have 50 minutes. Their job is to get off the island and to talk to each other. That's it. Very simple instructions.
And are they cycling through in the same group? So the same group that just did the critical, or different groups?
No, all different,
Wonderful.
because critical is 3, and then my program coordinator does everything. So now we have 6 new groups, okay? And again, however she arranges it. So 3 in critical station, and then 6 in the escape room, okay? So we put them in the room, we close the door, we start the timer. So we see who are the ones that are leading, who are the ones in the middle, and who stands in the corner. Because we know in the operating room we want the leaders in a trauma, right? So we're looking at the engagement, the teamwork, their problem-solving skills, right? Their adaptation, their communication effectiveness, and their
yeah, you're
leadership.
communicating to try and solve a problem.
Yeah.
And in real life, and what we do, sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. And
Yeah.
that is what we're looking for. You don't have to lead all the time. You need to, this puzzle, I can figure it out, but the next puzzle, after you get that one, somebody else may do that. So you need to learn how to lead and you need to learn how to follow, because that's also important in this profession. You're not going to be leading all the time. So you need to know, okay, fine, this is something, this person has it. And they look and, that they get points taken off if they're arguing and stuff like that, and they don't get off the island. So, I mean, that's the whole point of it.
Womp.
Yeah, that's the whole point of it, is to get off the island.
But nobody does. I say maybe out of 2 years of doing this, maybe 3 groups got off that, and we don't want, it's okay.
It's okay.
But we're testing the authentic, that's the key, problem-solving skills. Because if you remember during COVID, right, why do you want to be a CRNA? How many hours did you shadow? What ethical dilemma? How is that authentic when you've maybe rehearsed, paid for a coach to be eloquently poised, and we're trying to find out where that real person is, right? Would they put the script down and just speak from the heart? So you get to see it in a team dynamics, the authentic self.
What I'm hearing as well is a lot of flexibility, this mental flexibility to sort of flip between roles, which is a huge piece of resilience.
What we want.
Huge piece of resilience.
So are they rigid and I have to be doing this role all the time, or can I flow?
Remember that these people don't know each other. So you are working with 5 other strangers that you know nothing about.
So we see a lot of folks that come through that do come from the same unit, or they've crossed paths at times. Do you make sure that they're not in a group with people that they've worked with previously?
They get to pick their time,
The probability of that happening is, you may know 1 person out of the 6. Okay, well, the other 4 you don't. The probability of all of them knowing each other is very low.
And if they've worked together, that doesn't mean they're BFFs. So it could be that they've encountered one another, but they haven't truly directly worked with that other unit.
It's not the same. The chances of that happening are probably very low.
So the last 2 years, 36 to 40% have been from out of state. So impossible for them to know each other.
Sure.
So by chance, probability,
Pretty low.
Yeah. So I've never. And you get to see their emotional regulation in that escape room. And we're behind the screen, right? And we've got it's really fascinating. I mean, this year we have another faculty member, Dr. Campbell, who's revising it, and it's going to be exciting. Yeah.
Fun.
We're going to change it up this year.
Because the faculty that is rating, they sit behind a one-way mirror, because we do it in our simulation center. So they cannot even, because sometimes you get cues. I remember you were a student, if you were doing something right, you would see it in your preceptor's face, and if you were going the wrong way, you would see it in their face too. So doing that eliminates those cues that you give. And so they're behind the glass, you can't see. So and the last station, which is that, I think that's the most interesting one.
Yeah.
It's this domino station.
It gets better. Wow.
Yeah, the candidates hate this station.
Yeah, the domino station is interesting because we have a barrier, okay? The faculty puts a pattern with dominoes. The candidate gets instructed, the numbers don't count, the colors don't count.
They have dominoes too.
They have dominoes. So the faculty has 20 dominoes, so they have arranged in a pattern, whatever pattern they want. The candidate has 20 dominoes, and their goal is to replicate what the faculty has. And the only way they can do that is by asking yes or no questions.
It's a little like Battleship, sort of like the game Battleship.
But you can only answer yes or no questions.
The
and
faculty.
You're not looking, in Battleship, once you find one spot, you know where the other 3 are.
Right.
Because you just keep
It
going.
just made me think of Battleship.
Yeah. No, which is a good analogy. But the issue is that the pattern, it's a pattern.
Right.
So you're not going to, and the only thing they can do is ask yes, no.
Okay.
Questions.
And you're looking for
That's it.
cognitive flexibility, which is resiliency.
Yes.
And we've had candidates curse, slam the door, cry. Can't do that in the operating room.
Does throwing an F-bomb rule you out?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We've had that too. Obviously, they didn't
More than
get
once.
admitted.
Okay.
They didn't get admitted.
And so every reviewer in every station has a box on an Excel for comments. And those comments are invaluable. So, and it's interesting, and I can't wait to get data because we don't have it yet. People who do well in the critical thinking station, and this is anecdotally of me reading all these rubrics over 2 years, do terrible in dominoes. People who do great in dominoes do terrible in critical thinking. So does that mean the people who can critically think have no resiliency? We need a resiliency scale. So these are all unknowns, but it's very interesting. If I showed you the Excel, the points that they got in critical and the points that they got in dominoes. So the candidates, I'll be like, how did it go? Oh, we hated dominoes. What is it looking at? I can't tell you, right? Because Can't tell you. And so if you say, are your dominoes standing? And I say no. Well, they don't know what to do. Are your dominoes touching? Yes. They don't know what to say, right? So it's that short-term persistence under a lot of uncertainty and that emotional regulation when progress is slow.
And testing when you think about it, what is it that we're looking at? Well, essentially the candidate is testing a hypothesis, okay? Well, are they touching? They're not touching. So you're continuously testing. Again, I don't think we've had anybody in the 2 years that we've done it match the pattern. They never do, which is fine. It doesn't, the goal is to replicate the pattern, but that's not really what we're looking for. What we're looking for is how do you behave? How do you interact?
The systematic problem solving.
Do you have a systematic approach to doing stuff? That's what we're looking for. So the fact that nobody's gotten the pattern is irrelevant. That's not what we want to see. We want to see is how do you think?
How do you approach
Do you keep being told no, no, no? Do you still keep going?
And what is that system that you're using to
resiliency?
Try
to yes, resiliency theoretically should be measured in long term because that's usually what happens. But at least we're getting a slice of it. We're getting a very narrow slice of resiliency because if you give up, obviously you have none. If you keep going, you have some. And if you get upset, then obviously we have a problem because that's not the way our profession works. You can't do that in the middle of a case. So that's what we're trying to evaluate. The fact that they don't get the pattern is not really them.
It's an individual. This isn't a team.
One-on-one.
And you have
This is
6
the
minutes
only-
to try to repeat the pattern?
This is
Correct.
the only station that's one-on-one.
Correct.
The only station.
And which faculty I'm just curious.
Dr. Campbell, this is her baby. And so next year we have other faculty because she wanted to move into the escape room, which she did an amazing job for this year. So I don't know who's going to be in Dominoes. I know Dr. Lindsay Bell did it last year, and we're going to put another faculty. I have an adjunct who really wants it because they love our interview process. So I have people can I help this year? I'm like, absolutely.
I'd love to come observe.
You're more than welcome.
Because we're trying to improve. Every year we're trying to improve our
You can be a
admissions
judge,
process,
14th, 15th of May.
What's great about it is, again, some of the fun aspect to it, it's so out of the box. It's so different than the typical,
It's
standard
gamification. Essentially, we're gamifying.
And the evidence supports it. It's measurable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get, there is no perfect system to evaluate candidates. There's no system that's going to tell you that you're going to pick the correct 55 and they're going to go on and everybody's going to graduate and nobody's going to fail any courses or anything. That doesn't exist. But what we're trying to do is approach some sort of point at which we can say with certainty, okay, fine, out of this cohort, you maybe have 1 or 2 at most that are maybe not, versus 10, 15. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that. And that's hard. That's hard to do.
The reality is we'll never get it perfect because we can't control for life circumstances, and we know that contributes to attrition in addition to the baseline characteristics and skills that somebody might show up with. So as perfect as you're going to get, you're probably still going to have some attrition, which is...
In a more perfect world, we would do more stations. But that's the other problem with this. The literature, all the studies that were done in Canada and all that stuff, there's 10 to 12 stations.
Wow.
Logistically, there's no way, unless you have a huge program with lots of faculty or lots of support from your community partners to come and help when you have the interviews, that you can have that many. It's just impossible. Try to get at least what is it that we want to see, and we ended up with 4. So,
like Vince said, if you look at the literature in Canada, if you look at our references, they're very old. They've been doing multiple mini interviews and OSCEs in group settings for over 20 years.
Sure.
So there's not a lot of new literature. It's out there, but our references are old to support this. And the medical schools are all over it, all over the literature in North America.
Yeah, not only here, but also in Europe. The UK, some of the universities in UK use a similar system in their medical schools. So that's what we're trying to see, again.
This could be a disaster. We won't know for a couple of years.
Ideally, ideally we would have.
We don't know. We don't know. It
Part
sounds
of the thing
great.
that was mentioned in one of the articles in the journal had an article, I think I want to say 2024, about grit. There was an article that was written about grit. And I was trying to find a way. He says, is there a way we can measure grit in a interview? Because grit is a long-term issue. How do you measure long-term in a short-term point? And that was something that, I'm trying to figure that out. Because if you ask somebody about, something that you did that took you a while, everybody's going to come up with a Cinderella story. They struggled, they climbed mountains up and down. Persevered, and eventually you succeeded. So trying to find a way to knock that out. I'm trying to think, well, how can we bypass that Cinderella story? Now, one of the ways that you do that is really by keep knocking him down. Oh, you tried that? Well, guess what? For this particular, that didn't work. Now what? What are you going to do? Well, that didn't work either. To get them to the point of frustration so that you're going to see they're really resilient in the way they respond. But that's something that's on the road. Let's get this done first. That's a added station. Once we get data for this, then we're going to try and see if we can measure grit in any meaningful way. Because, again, it's persistence over time. You don't have time. You only have your finite interview time. So how do we measure that?
I'm thinking, as you're saying this, that there may simply be characteristics that we can't assess in an interview because we don't have that long-term data.
Correct.
We don't see them across multiple situations. It's a dynamic characteristic, so it's going to change in different situations.
And it does. Grit changes over time. So, but,
This seems to hopefully make a step forward from, the traditional way that we used to interview candidates where we're asking them, tell me how you react in a difficult situation. You're like,
non-cognitive.
they're going to tell you whatever they want to hear.
Well, not only that, they're always going to come up with a happy ending. Think about it.
I saved the
tell
day.
Tell me an ethical dilemma. Well, they're always going to come up with a happy answer. And that's not really what you want to hear. You want to hear that, you know what? Yes, eventually I give up because this was going nowhere. Whatever the reason is, that's more real than their Cinderella story. I don't want to hear a Cinderella story. I want to hear what really happened.
Yeah, this is not a movie. This
Yes.
is like, we're going to try to get you through this incredibly challenging period. And to do that, you're going to need skills. And I need to be able to know where you break down and where you don't.
I think it throws off the candidates, though, because they think they're going to have a one-on-one, right? Or they've interviewed at other programs, like they're waiting to answer that ethical question, or they're waiting to tell you how much they shadowed or why they want to be a CRNA. We don't ask any of that. They don't get a one-on-one with me or any of the faculty. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the piloting. When the admissions office came from the university, they said, okay, you're going to have a bias. You can't do this. Like, they made sure, like on Domino's, Dr. Campbell was great. She's like, yes, no. She could never say anything else. And admissions said if you sway from that, then we're going to have a problem, because one candidate could say you treated them differently than the other one. So all she was ever allowed to do was say yes or no. And they were great, because that's all they do is admissions, right? And they assessed us, the rubrics. I mean, it was great feedback when we piloted this.
So that brings up a really great point. And I have done, some lit review on MMIs. Our medical school does use that and has used that for a very long time, very successfully. And we've transitioned to in that direction. What kind of training, in addition to this quality assurance audit that was done, that's clearly sort of a letting your faculty know you have to eliminate bias. You can't ask follow-up questions. You need to stick to the script, stay with that. Is it more of an internal training or?
It was internal. Jody Glassman is in charge of admissions, and she's an acknowledgement on our PowerPoint, was implemental. Came every time we interviewed, she sat in all the rooms to make sure we stuck to the pilot. And she was there every second, every day. She approved it. So we had our feedback, our formative feedback. It was internal. They know what they're doing because they do the whole university. And then day one, came in, sat in all the stations, sat in the corner, and we all stuck to the plan. Yeah.
Everybody stuck to the script.
Everyone stuck to the script.
Well, it's so new.
Yeah. We love doing it every year. Like, it's exciting. I feel like I'm going to a wedding every year. Huh?
I think it's great that you test them on, or you're not testing them, but assess them, evaluate them based on CCRN knowledge that they have. I remember when I was in the application process in the ICU with other ICU nurses applying to school, trying to get admission to a nursing anesthesia program, and they were studying aspects of drugs that were beyond the scope of an RN. And I was like, how do you know? There's so much to learn. That's why they're coming to us, for us to prepare them to be nurse anesthetists. I was like, how do you prepare for that? That's why I want to go to your school. So I think it's fair that you are evaluating them on knowledge that they already have. And I think it's great that they have to have their CCRN. I think
they have to have it.
Well, it does two things, having a CCRN. One of the qualifications to be able to sit for a CCRN exam is that you have to have a year of full-time or equivalent. Now, a year is 2,080 hours. So they have to have that many hours, whether part-time, if it's part-time, it's 2 years, whatever the time is. The CCRN does that for us because it's a requirement that you need at least a year of ICU. So we're not looking and we're not checking references. When did you start? No. CCRN is doing that for us.
Takes a lot of stress off of us.
Yeah, we don't have to check when did this start?
Adaptability.
Because you started, you were 3 months in orientation, so really you only have all that is avoided. You have a CCRN, you are at least a year of ICU experience, because otherwise you can't sit for it.
That's a great point. Well, we could, I think, talk all day about this topic. It's a really fascinating process that you guys have implemented. I commend you on all of the work that you've done to get this to where you are. I'll be looking for that data. I think we'll all be excited to see how your outcomes are after a couple of years for that. It's just fascinating and a whole lot of fun, a little bit more levity to it than some of the traditional processes. So thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for
Closing
having
thoughts,
us.
Louisa.
No, thank you. I've learned a lot, and that's a big reason why I love this podcast and the reason I love nursing anesthesia education is because I feel like there are so many of us trying to do better. How can we do this better? How can we do this better? And that's why you're here.
And I think every program can do it because it's a low cost. I mean, the supplies were nothing, just a couple $100. The scalability, you do what you have, right? And so it can be done. Every program can do this.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.